I didn't wear white to my wedding. I wore winter. Ivory velvet lined in steel gray, cold enough to cut. The fabric trailed behind me like a frozen throne, my heels clicking across marble that didn't belong to me, toward a man I didn't choose, in front of people I didn't trust. A crowd of enemies watched. Some smiled. Some didn't. I didn't care. Because this wasn't a love story. It was a ceasefire. "You will marry him," my father had said, glass of scotch in one hand, a gun in the other, as if either could comfort me. "You don't need to like it. You just need to survive it." And when I asked if I had a choice, he didn't answer. That silence was my answer. So I walked toward the altar, if you could call it that, with my spine straight, my heart locked behind 10 years of survival, and my mouth full of the one thing I still owned. My lies. The American king stood at the end of that aisle, carved from shadow and something colder. Hunter Blackwood. The name alone tasted like ash. They said he was ruthless, brilliant, lethal, too rich to need alliances, too violent to care about enemies. And yet, here he was, dressed in black, waiting for me. The man who'd destroyed half of Europe's southern syndicates by age 35. The man my father once called a plague in a suit. Now my husband. Our hands met in silence, his fingers curled around mine, large and unyielding, but strangely warm. Not comforting, not kind, just alive. I didn't look up. I didn't want to know what his eyes would say. I didn't want to give him the satisfaction of seeing mine. But then he spoke, low and private, so close only I could hear it. "You look like vengeance," he murmured. "Perfect fit." My heart stuttered, but my face didn't flinch. "You look like regret," I whispered back. "Perfect match." He laughed. God help me, he actually laughed. Not soft, not amused, but sharp and cruel, like he found my defiance adorable. And I hated how that sound stayed with me even when the vows began, even when I lied, even when I promised to obey. His thumb brushed the inside of my wrist when I said it. The pressure made my lungs twist, like he knew, like he could feel the falsehood pulsing under my skin. But he said nothing. He just stared, and then he said his vows, brutally simple, stripped of poetry. "I will not betray you, I will not touch another, and I will never lie to you." 3 promises, steel-clad, cold. But it was the next part that set the terms. He leaned closer, took my hand again, and added, "If you lie to me, even once, this ends." There it was. My condition was that we'd never sleep together. His condition? That I never lie. But I had already lied, because I had said I didn't want him. And that wasn't true. I didn't want the war. I didn't want the chaos. I didn't want the cost of him. But him? The way his voice curled around my name? The way his hand branded my spine when he pulled me in for the final photo? The way he looked at me like he could ruin me without ever touching me? No, I wanted him. God help me, I wanted him. Which meant I'd already failed. By the time he kissed my cheek for the cameras, slow, deliberate, with his lips just barely brushing skin, I'd already broken his only rule. And he knew. I saw it in his eyes when he stepped back. Hunter Blackwood didn't believe in accidents, and he never took what wasn't offered. But I had offered it. Just once. Just for a second. A breath caught between my inhale and his exhale, and now I was his. Not in body, not yet. But something worse. Something he would never return. The car ride after the ceremony was silent. Not cold, not tense. Just silent, in that brutal, deliberate way that made it feel louder than any scream. Hunter didn't look at me. He didn't touch me either. He just sat on the opposite side of the limousine, suit immaculate, cufflinks flashing gold under the passing streetlights, fingers steepled like a man preparing for war. And maybe he was. Because marrying me wasn't a merger. It was a sacrifice, and I knew the cost. We weren't going to the reception. There was none. No dancing, no speeches, no smiling family to fake a toast. Just a short, sharp ceremony, 100 unsaid threats in every guest's smile, and now, this. A straight drive to his estate, where I was expected to settle in like a well-trained bride. But I wasn't trained. I was strategic, and I had one rule to survive this. He doesn't touch me. Ever. The limo slowed. When the door opened, he stepped out first, then turned and offered his hand. I hesitated, not because I didn't want to take it, but because I did, and that made it dangerous. I took it anyway. His grip was firm, his palm warm. He didn't say a word as I stood and took in the estate. It was a fortress, stone and iron, sharp lines and no softness, beautiful in the way a knife was beautiful, cold, elegant, and always meant to cut. The doors opened before us, staff waited in silence, no congratulations, No smiles. Just bowed heads and sharp nods. I couldn't tell if they feared him or revered him. Maybe both. He didn't look at me again until we were inside. Then he turned. "I'll show you your wing," he said simply. "You'll have your own floor, locked, if you want it that way." My wing, my floor, locked. He was honoring my rule. He wasn't going to touch me. And yet, "There's something you should know," I said, forcing my voice into a careful calm. "This arrangement doesn't give you ownership. But it gives you pause." He studied me like I was a puzzle he already solved, but wanted to enjoy breaking apart. "And there's something you should know," he said, stepping closer. "I don't need ownership. I only need truth." He was too close now, not touching me, just there. His scent hit first, expensive and dark like spice over smoke. My body betrayed me, pulling in the air like it needed it. His gaze dropped to my mouth and lingered. "If you lie to me again," he murmured, "I'll know." I swallowed. "And if I don't?" I asked. He smiled, not cruel, not warm. "Something worse. If you don't," he said, "I might make you mine anyway." Then he stepped back, and I hated how my body swayed forward like it missed him. He showed me the way to my wing in silence. It was opulent, but cold, like no one had ever truly lived here. Like he'd given me the most beautiful prison he could build. There were fresh clothes in the closet, neutral colors, European designers, my size. I didn't ask how he knew. He didn't offer an explanation. "Dinner is at 9, he said, pausing at the threshold. "You can join me, or not. I won't come looking." I didn't answer, and he didn't wait. He disappeared down the hall, leaving nothing but his scent in the air and a warning in the space between us. But I knew what this was. He was a man who didn't beg, didn't chase, didn't need to, because people gave him what he wanted, eventually. And now I lived in his house. I wore his ring. And worst of all, part of me wanted to go to dinner, not because I was hungry, but because he didn't ask. And that made it feel like my choice. I didn't go to dinner. I waited until the staff cleared the dishes. Then I crept down the hall like a ghost in silk, barefoot, uninvited. Not because I cared what he served, but because I needed to see the way he lived. Hunter Blackwood's world was made of obsidian and silver, clean lines, black glass, and not a single photograph in sight. His estate wasn't just guarded, it was curated. No softness, no sentiment, just like him. I passed the dining room, empty now. A long mahogany table stretched beneath a chandelier sharp enough to cut air. One chair had been pushed back. There was still a napkin folded beside the plate, still a glass of untouched wine, and beside it a book, worn leather, marked pages. He'd brought a novel to dinner with his new wife. That should have made me furious, but all it did was make me curious. I was halfway to the library when I heard the footsteps. Slow, unrushed, deliberate. I turned, and there he was. Hunter didn't look surprised to find me wandering. He looked bored. That was worse. "You're avoiding your own wing," he said calmly, no judgment in his tone. "Are the sheets not cold enough?" I tilted my head. "Are the cameras off?" His lips curved, not quite a smile. "You don't have to sneak. You live here." "That's funny," I murmured. "I don't remember choosing to." "You chose not to die." That should have stung. It didn't, because he was right, and I hated how easily he said it. "I'm not here to fight you," I said. "No," he agreed. "You're here to survive me." He stepped closer. 1 pace. 2. I didn't back away. That was my mistake, because suddenly he was too close, all heat and silence, and the low hum of tension under his skin. He didn't reach for me, didn't touch my hair, didn't trail a single finger over my skin. But I felt him, everywhere. "Tell me the real reason you're out here," he said, voice low like a secret he already owned. "I was exploring," I said evenly, his brow lifted. "Lie," my pulse skipped. "Then maybe I was curious," I amended. "Closer," he said. My breath hitched. "And maybe I wanted to see if you were the monster they warned me about." He smiled. "Curious little bride," he said, voice dark silk. "Most women don't seek out their monsters. Most monsters don't wear 3-piece suits and quote ancient poetry between body counts." That made something flash in his eyes. Pride? Approval? Amusement? I couldn't tell. I didn't want to know. Because the longer he looked at me, the more I realized something dangerous. He wanted me to lie, so he'd have a reason to break the rule. But worse, he wanted the truth even more, and that would ruin me faster. I stepped back finally. He let me. "You made your rule," I said. "No lies. I'll keep it. For now. And I expect you to keep yours." His eyes darkened. "I always keep my word." "No touching." He didn't move, but something in the air between us thickened, coiled, shifted. His voice dropped an octave. Then don't make me want to. Hold on. Before I say what happened next, tell me where you were listening from. What city or country? Put it in the comments. Now, let's get back to my dilemma. I didn't sleep that night. Not because I was scared, but because I couldn't stop thinking about the way he looked at me, like he already knew how I'd fall. And worse, like he'd enjoy watching me try not to. When morning came, there was a tray outside my door. Black coffee, no cream, no sugar, the way I always took it. I hadn't told him that, but somehow, he knew. And I didn't know if that made me feel seen or owned. It happened in the courtyard. The sun had the audacity to shine, gilding the cold stone in gold as I wandered beyond the western wing. I hadn't meant to leave the house. I didn't plan on staying inside either. I just needed air. I wasn't built for cages, no matter how luxurious the bars. The courtyard was quiet, secluded, centered around a marble fountain that no longer worked. Vines had begun to claim it. As if nature herself had tried to soften the edges of Hunter Blackwood's empire. She'd failed. A splash broke the silence, then a second, then a small, delighted laugh. I wasn't alone. I turned the corner and saw a girl, couldn't have been more than 6, tossing pebbles into the basin. Her dark curls were wild, her shoes mismatched. She sang to herself in soft, slurred French. A maid stood nearby, anxious, watching the house. She froze when she saw me. "Forgive me, Signora," she whispered. "I didn't know you were—" "Who is she?" I interrupted, nodding toward the child. The maid hesitated. "Her name is Colette." "That's not what I meant." She lowered her eyes. "She's the housekeeper's daughter. Sometimes she slips away. I'll take her back immediately." "Don't." The maid blinked. "She's not hurting anything," I said. "Let her play." Colette looked up just then, saw me, and froze. For a long moment we just stared at each other. Then she grinned. "Are you the Ice Queen?" she asked in a perfect British accent that was somehow worse than the French. I almost laughed. Almost. "Maybe," I replied, stepping closer. "What do you think?" She tilted her head, suspicious. "You don't look mean. Looks can lie. So can words. Smart girl. Hunter's kind of girl. I like your dress," she added with the brutal honesty of a child. "You look like a princess who bites." That time I did laugh, and I hated how it felt. Like something cracked open behind my ribs. The maid looked horrified. I waved her off. "It's fine," I said. "Really." I sat on the edge of the fountain, and Colette offered me a pebble like it was treasure. I took it, tossed it, watched the ripple break the water's surface, and for the first time since I entered this house, I didn't feel watched. Until I did. The hairs on my neck prickled first. I looked up. He was there. Hunter stood just beyond the archway, dressed in a dark shirt, sleeves rolled, arms crossed, watching me with an expression I couldn't translate. Not anger, not amusement. Something unreadable. I stood slowly, smoothing my skirt. Colette kept singing. "She's sweet," I said without looking at him. "Does she live here?" "No," he replied, "but she's safer here." That told me everything and nothing. "You could have told me you had a child in the courtyard," I said coolly. "She's not mine." "But you protect her." His gaze didn't waver. "Of course. Because you're such a good man?" "No." His voice was low, flat. "Because I know what men do to girls like her when no one's watching." Something about the way he said it, like he knew, like he'd seen it, or worse, stopped it with blood. I swallowed the lump in my throat. "You have a soft spot," I murmured. "Interesting." He took a step closer, then another. "No, Anna Marie," he said, "you're the soft spot." My heart stuttered. He stopped 2 paces away, eyes sharp. "You don't belong here. Then why marry me?" "Because I needed peace. And now? Now I want war," he said quietly, "but only if it ends with your surrender." I stared at him. He didn't blink. "Colette," I said, keeping my voice even, "go back inside. Take your stones with you." The little girl didn't argue. She just smiled and skipped away like the tension in the air didn't weigh 1,000 pounds. When she was gone, I turned back to him. "You want surrender?" I asked. "Then try earning it." Hunter stepped closer, close enough that I had to tip my chin up to meet his eyes. His scent wrapped around me again. Dark, expensive, dangerous. "You think this is about earning?" he asked, voice silken steel. "Anna, if I wanted to break you, I wouldn't use force." "No?" My voice barely held steady. "No," he murmured. "I'd use patience." A breath. Then he leaned in, not to kiss, but to whisper. "And I'd make sure you asked me to." I didn't move. I couldn't. because something inside me cracked. Not all the way, but enough, and he knew it. He cornered me that night. Not in the way I expected, not with walls or force, but with truth. I was in the upstairs study reading a book I didn't understand, pretending I wasn't waiting to hear his footsteps. The door opened anyway. No knock, no warning. Just him. Hunter Blackwood, in all his terrifying quiet, closing the door behind him like a man entering a room he owned. Which of course he did, including me. "How did you know about the coffee?" I asked before he could speak, keeping my voice steady. "I didn't," he said. "I guessed." My heart kicked. "Convenient guess." "Calculated," he corrected. "I've read every file they ever wrote on you, Anna Marie. I know how you speak when you're lying. I know what perfume you stopped wearing after your mother died. I know you drink your coffee black, but only when you're scared." I froze. He didn't stop. "I know you press your thumb into your palm when you're hiding something. I know you keep your shoes organized by heel height, and I know the first time you said you didn't want me." He stepped closer. "You meant the opposite." I swallowed hard. "So you spy." "I study." "Is that what you're doing now?" He smiled, but there was no warmth in it. "No, now I'm confirming." He moved to the edge of the desk. His hand landed beside mine, not touching, but close enough that I felt the heat bleed into my skin. He didn't reach for me. He didn't have to. "I gave you one rule," he said, "and you broke it before I ever kissed you." "I didn't lie," I whispered. His gaze dropped to my mouth. "You did. You don't know what I feel. I know what you run from." That landed deeper than it should have. He didn't raise his voice, didn't move an inch closer, but I felt pinned all the same. "You think I want you?" I asked, lifting my chin. "I know you want me," he said, "but more importantly, I know you're terrified that you do." The silence stretched between us, long, dangerous, true. I should have denied it. Instead, I asked, "And what do you want?" That smile again, the slow, sinful kind that made my stomach twist. "You." The word cracked through me like thunder. "But not until you admit it," he added. Out loud. No lies, no rules. My heart pounded. "That's not part of the agreement." "Then change the agreement." "No." He leaned down, mouth close to my ear. "Then suffer the tension, sposa mia," he said, his voice dark silk, "because I won't break first." The nickname coiled around my spine like a chain, my wife in Italian. He said it like a threat and a promise. I should have walked away. I didn't, because I liked the way he looked at me, with that sharp, knowing heat, like he saw past every icy mask I wore and wanted what was buried beneath. He didn't reach for me. He didn't kiss me. He just waited. Damn him. "You're not going to win," I said, my voice low. He tilted his head. "Anna, darling." He leaned in just enough to graze my cheek with the heat of his breath. "Winning isn't getting you in my bed." "No?" "No," he whispered. "Winning is making you beg to stay." It was just a phone call. 5 minutes, 10 words. But in this house, secrets don't echo. They detonate. I waited until midnight when the halls went quiet and the guards rotated. I slipped into the study barefoot, heart hammering behind my ribs like it wanted out. I knew the risks. I did it anyway. The line was clean, untraceable. My brother had made sure of that before the wedding. One call, one code phrase. That's all. "Tell father the ice is holding," I said. "For now." I hung up before he could answer. It wasn't betrayal. It was a warning, a whisper across enemy lines. But even then, I felt it. The shift in the air, the knowing. Because Hunter wasn't the kind of man who needed proof. He needed instinct, and mine had just sealed its own fate. The next morning, he didn't speak to me, didn't look at me, didn't even breathe near me. The silence wasn't angry. It was surgical, punishment by absence. And it cut deeper than any scream ever could. Breakfast arrived, untouched. My door stayed open, ignored. Even Colette was gone, removed, hidden, like I couldn't be trusted with softness anymore. He was everywhere and nowhere. A shadow in the walls, and when I finally saw him again, it was at dusk by the West Terrace. He stood with his back to me, drink in hand, sleeves rolled, tension coiled tight in every inch of his body. I don't know what made me speak, but I did. It wasn't betrayal. He didn't move. I stepped closer. It was a warning, that's all. I used one phrase. He doesn't even know what it means. Still nothing. So I did what I never do. I begged. "Say something." Hunter turned slowly, and I knew, before he opened his mouth, that I'd lost something I'd never even had. He looked at me like I was a stranger wearing my own skin. "No more lies," he said, voice low and cold. "That was the deal. I didn't lie. You didn't speak." My throat tightened. I was trying to stop a war. He stepped closer, eyes like steel under frost. You think I care about their war? This wasn't about politics. This was about us. There is no us, I snapped. The silence after that was thunderous. He smiled. But it wasn't cruel. It was wounded. I see, he said. So that's the new lie. I wanted to take it back, but I couldn't, because I just told the one truth I didn't believe, and he heard the crack in it. You're angry, I whispered. Say it. No. Why? Because anger would mean I didn't expect this, he said simply, and I did. That hit harder than anything else, because I wasn't just a disappointment, I was predictable. I didn't touch him, I said, desperation slipping through. I didn't ask, he replied. That stopped me. He was calm, composed, deadly. But something in his voice trembled, not with rage, with restraint. You're the one thing in this house I didn't want to break, he said quietly, but you just handed me the hammer. And then he walked away. No slammed doors, no threats, just distance, and the terrifying truth that I might have finally broken the one rule that mattered. It was supposed to be a quiet dinner, neutral ground, a few allies, no blood. But the minute I stepped into the hall, I knew something was off. Too many eyes, too many smiles, and none of them reached the eyes. Hunter stood at the head of the table, midnight black suit tailored to sin, flanked by men who ran cities and killed without flinching. Power bled from every inch of that room. But all of it bowed to him. He didn't look at me when I entered. Not at first. But I felt him. I always felt him. My place was to his right. Symbolic, public, claimed. The chair was already pulled out. The wine was already poured. He knew I'd come. So I did what any strategic bride would do. I sat, I smiled, and I waited for the threat to show itself. It didn't take long. Halfway through the second course, a man I didn't recognize leaned across the table, eyes sharp and lazy like a predator in the sun. He had a French accent and a scar down his chin, one that pulled every grin into a sneer. You're far prettier than they said, he told me. No wonder he put a ring on it. I didn't flinch. Hunter didn't move. Does your husband let you speak, the man added, or are you only allowed to dress the part? Silence. And then, slowly, Hunter placed his fork down. The scrape of silver on porcelain made my skin prickle. Careful, he said, voice calm and clear. You're one insult away from being fed to my dogs. A few men laughed. The scarred one didn't. She married into power, Blackwood, he said. That doesn't make her untouchable. Hunter's smile didn't reach his eyes. No, but it makes you replaceable. The man stood. I stood faster. And for a second, just one, I saw it. Hunter's hand twitch. Not in anger, in instinct. Like he was already imagining the violence. Enough, I said, voice sharp, controlled. This is a table, not a battleground. But the man's eyes slid to me, narrowed, and then he said something stupid. He said my name. My real name, not the Windsor one, the other one. The one buried in sealed files and whispered legends. The name only family should know. I didn't blink, but my blood iced. Hunter did move then, not fast, not loud, but final. He walked around the table with a terrifying sort of elegance, stopped beside the man and said, "Leave, now." The man sneered, "You'd start a war over a woman?" Hunter didn't answer with worry, he answered with a gun. Silenced. Silver. Already in his hand. He didn't fire it, he didn't have to. The message was clear. Touch her, even with your mouth, and die. The man left. No one else spoke for the rest of dinner. Hey, before I tell you what he said next, are you still with me? Because this is where it stops being a story and starts being a trap. Now, let's get back to my downfall. After dinner, I found him in the hall, back turned, hands in his pockets like nothing had happened. You didn't have to do that, I said quietly. He didn't turn around, I know. So why? Now he did turn, slowly, like he wasn't sure I'd want the answer. But I did. He looked me in the eye and said, "Because I'm the only one allowed to break you." My breath caught. You think that's comforting? No, he said, but it's honest. I stared at him, all of him, and for once I didn't see the monster they warned me about. I saw the man who made the world flinch and just silenced a room for me, not because he loved me, because I was his. And for now, that was enough. He didn't come to bed that night, not that he ever had. But this was different. This wasn't restraint, this was exile, and I was the one he'd banished. I didn't sleep, didn't pace, didn't cry. I just sat in the dark, legs pulled to my chest, his name curled behind my teeth like it didn't belong to me anymore. By morning, the house had changed, not in decor, not in staff, in atmosphere, like the walls had been warned. No one met my eyes. No one spoke unless spoken to. Even the air had turned colder. I was still Hunter Blackwood's wife, but I was no longer his, and everyone knew it. The only thing waiting for me outside my bedroom door was a note. 9 p.m. My office. No signature, no kindness, just that single demand. And I obeyed it, because I had to, because he'd made this war private now. And I didn't know what I was walking into. His office was colder than usual, dimly lit, smelling faintly of smoke and ash. One glass of bourbon sat on the desk. Untouched. He was standing when I entered, suit jacket off, sleeves rolled, shirt unbuttoned, just enough to hint at heat beneath all that ice. He didn't look at me. Close the door. I did. He didn't move, didn't speak for nearly a minute, then sit. I sat and waited. He finally looked up, and I felt every wall in me shiver. This wasn't the man who had protected me, or studied me, or wanted me. This was the king, and I was the traitor. You used a phrase only your family would know, he said calmly. You made a call from my estate. You used my line, my protection, my trust. I stayed silent. He leaned forward, knuckles resting on the desk. You warned them. About me. No, I said softly. I warned them about me. He blinked once. I swallowed hard. I told them the ice was holding. That's all. I wanted to keep things calm, keep blood off both sides. You told them I hadn't broken you yet, he said, voice low. You let them believe they still had time. My breath caught. He wasn't wrong. I didn't tell them anything. Strategic, I said. Nothing about you. Nothing about the house. I've kept every secret. But you didn't keep mine, he said. I frowned. What secret? That I cared. That hit harder than it should have. He walked around the desk. Slow, controlled, terrifying in his quiet. He didn't touch me. He stood just behind my chair, close enough to feel, far enough to wound. You were never the enemy, Anna-Marie, he said. Until now. My chest tightened. I'm not. You are, he cut in, because you gave them hope. Silence, then softer, and hope is the first thing I kill. Before I tell you what he did next, this is your warning. After this, all bets are off. I should have ran, but you all know me. Now, let's get back to the moment it broke. When I stood, he didn't stop me. When I turned to leave, he didn't speak. But just before I reached the door, his voice caught me. If you run now, he said, you'll never get another chance. I paused, turned, and saw the truth in his eyes. He wasn't threatening me, he was daring me, because this was the point of no return. Stay, and he'd ruin me. Run, and he'd never chase again. I'm not running, I said quietly. He didn't smile, he just nodded once, sharp, then said, good, and locked the door behind me. I waited 3 nights for the silence to break. 3 long, brutal nights of untouched sheets, untouched meals, untouched everything. No word, no glance, no war, but no peace either. And I wasn't sure which was worse. I told myself I didn't care, that I preferred it this way, that I needed the space to think, but all I did was feel. And that made me dangerous. Because when Hunter Blackwood finally opened the door to my bedroom, I didn't run. He didn't speak, didn't ask permission. He just entered, slow and measured, and sat in the chair across from my bed like he'd done it 1,000 times before, as if he belonged there, as if I belonged to him. I thought I wasn't yours anymore, I said, breaking the silence. His eyes met mine, empty of heat, empty of mercy, but not empty of truth. You never stopped being mine, he said. You just stopped pretending you weren't. I should have denied it. I didn't. Instead, I asked, why now? He leaned forward, elbows on knees, hands clasped like he was trying not to reach for something he didn't trust himself to hold. Because the man you warned them about, he said, he doesn't exist anymore. My breath caught. They made me into him, he added. But you're undoing it. I didn't know what to say, because I wasn't ready to hear that, and he wasn't ready to say it again. So he stood, crossed the room, sat beside me on the edge of the bed. I stiffened, but he didn't touch me, didn't try, just sat there. Close, warm, unmoving. I haven't slept, he murmured. I turned to him, caught off guard. You don't sleep? I do, he said, but not when I'm waiting for someone to run. I studied him then, really looked, and for the first time I saw what they didn't. Not the power, not the cold, but the exhaustion beneath it. You were never the enemy, I said, voice quieter than I meant. He didn't answer, just looked at me with something like grief. I keep thinking, I whispered, if I hadn't made that call. You would have made another mistake, he said simply, eventually. I blinked. Because you're terrified, he continued, not of me, of how much you want to trust me. My throat burned, and I hated that he was right. I don't trust easily. He gave a hollow laugh. Neither do I. Silence stretched again. But this time, it didn't hurt. It held. Something changed in the quiet. The edges softened. The war paused. And without thinking, I reached for his hand. He didn't move, didn't breathe. Then slowly he turned his palm up and laced his fingers through mine. Warm, rough, real. Nothing about the moment was sexual. Everything about it was intimate. So close, so quiet. Too much. I felt the heat first. The way it bloomed under my skin, curled low in my stomach, made my mouth go dry. Then I felt him shift. He turned toward me, gaze locked to mine. And for a second I swore he would kiss me. He didn't. He just raised our joined hands and pressed the back of mine to his mouth. A breath, a pause, a promise. Then he let go and left the room without a word. But everything had changed because now I knew what he tasted like, and I was starving for more. I kissed him first. It wasn't planned. It wasn't strategic. It was reckless, messy. Mine. It happened in the war room, the place where he built empires and buried rivals. I shouldn't have been in there. But I was done obeying doors. I'd come to confront him, to accuse, to unravel, to demand answers for why the girl I used to be was slipping further into his shadow every time he looked at me like I was more than a price he paid. But the second I saw him standing at that table, shirt sleeves rolled, tie loose, heat radiating off him like a storm barely leashed, I forgot how to fight. He looked up, eyes dark, and I just moved, crossed the room, grabbed the front of his shirt, and kissed him. It was fast and desperate, a collision of fury and craving, and it broke something I didn't know I'd been holding back for days. He didn't pull away, but he didn't deepen it either. He just stood there, lips parted under mine, breathing like a man who'd been underwater too long. And when I finally pulled back, he didn't chase. His eyes searched mine, wild and focused all at once. "Why?" he asked, voice raw. "Because I wanted to," I said. His jaw flexed, his hands stayed clenched at his sides. "I told you I wouldn't touch you," he said. "I know. And I meant it." I nodded. "Then why the hell?" he growled. "Would you make it harder?" The question punched air from my lungs because I didn't have an answer. Not one that made sense. Not one I could admit. But I gave him the only truth I could because I'm tired of pretending I don't feel anything. His breath hitched. And then he finally broke. Not me, him. He grabbed the edge of the table like if he touched me now it would undo both of us. "You think I don't want to claim you," he bit out. "You think I haven't imagined what your skin would feel like under my hands every night since the wedding?" My heart slammed. "But you made a rule," he said, voice lower now, "and I keep my word even when it kills me." I stepped closer. "You could change the rule." He looked at me like I was the most dangerous weapon in the room. "You'd regret it. Would I?" He didn't answer, just stared, and then slowly, painfully, he reached up, but not to touch, to brush my hair back. Fingertips grazing my temple like I was too fragile to claim. I leaned into it, just slightly. His hand dropped. "You kissed me," he said quietly. "I know, and now I want to burn the world for it." I should have been afraid, but all I felt was warmth, because this wasn't control, this wasn't manipulation, this was restraint, and it meant more than any love letter could have. "You're not breaking me," I whispered. He gave a bitter smile. "I'm not trying to." "Then what are you doing?" His voice was a breath when he answered, "Waiting." I didn't think I would ever betray my family. Not even after all of this. Not after the wedding, not after the silence, not even after Hunter kissed the back of my hand like it meant something. But tonight, I did. Because they crossed a line. And because he didn't deserve what was coming. I heard the whisper of it in a coded message pass through one of my father's men, a phrase I was never meant to intercept. Midnight storm, cut off the king. I wasn't supposed to know what it meant. But I did. They were going to ambush him, on his own property, using my access. They weren't just going to weaken him, they were going to kill him. And they were going to make it look like I let them in. Because maybe once, I might have been capable of it. But not now. Not after he kept his distance, even when I begged him not to. Not after he looked me in the eye and said he wouldn't touch me unless I asked. And not after I almost did. I found him in the surveillance room, alone, watching live feeds of his empire, like a man who never stopped guarding his crown. He didn't look up when I entered. "You're early," he said. I didn't bother with the games. They're coming. Tonight, through the east perimeter. That got his attention. His head turned, slow and sharp, eyes locking on mine. And how do you know that? Because they used a phrase only I was supposed to understand. He stood, cold fury rippling off him in quiet waves. So this is a test, he said. They're still trying to figure out which side you're on. I told you, I said. I'm not on any side. He stepped closer. And yet you warned me. I didn't do it for you. He stopped, inches away. Then who did you do it for? I swallowed. My throat felt tight, my skin too hot. For me, I whispered, because I couldn't live with myself if I let them take you out and didn't stop it. His gaze dropped to my mouth, then to my hand, then back to my eyes, and then, you're mine now. He didn't say it like a threat, he said it like a vow, and I didn't correct him because I wanted it to be true. Hold on, before I keep going, if you made it this far, you're in it with me. No exits. You're with me until the end. Now, back to the final storm. When the gunfire started, it was fast and surgical. I stayed in the control room while he handled it. Not because he told me to, because I trusted him to finish it. And he did, with brutal precision. By 12:07 a.m., the storm was over. By 12:10, the message had been sent. My father's men weren't just dead, they were erased, and my name, it had been removed from the game board. When Hunter returned, there was blood on his knuckles and none on his shirt. He didn't speak. He just walked straight to me, paused, and asked, "Are you ready to stop lying now?" I didn't answer. I just stepped into him. Slow, certain, wrapped my arms around his waist, pressed my cheek to his chest, and stayed. Because this time, I wasn't pretending. The first time he touched me, really touched me, it wasn't violent. It wasn't rough. It wasn't greedy. It wasn't revenge for the war I almost started. It was reverent. Like he'd been waiting his whole life to earn the right. Like I wasn't a pawn or a peace treaty or a girl who lied and almost got him killed. Like I was his. I didn't ask him to stop. And he didn't ask for permission. Because I gave it with my silence. With the way I unbuttoned my own blouse. With the way I let my knees bend under the weight of what we both knew was coming. He kissed me like he didn't care that I had been the price of peace. Because now, I was the reward of war. He took me apart slowly, not with his mouth, not with his hands, with presence, with heat. With the brutal stillness of a man who could destroy anything and chose not to. And when it was over, he didn't leave. He stayed, held me, breathed me in like I was oxygen and poison at once. And I didn't feel caged. I felt kept. I felt chosen. Aftercare came in the form of a thumb brushing along my wrist, a hand in my hair, and his voice, low and unguarded, whispering things he'd never said to anyone else. I don't believe in peace, he murmured, but I believe in you. That shouldn't have undone me, but it did, because it wasn't romantic, it was honest, and honesty was what started this. A rule I broke, a lie I told, and a man who caught it with one glance. I rolled onto my side, dragging the sheet with me. He watched me like he always did, like I was a puzzle with no corners, all chaos and sharp edges, but for once, he didn't try to solve me. He just reached out and traced the curve of my spine with his fingers, slow and reverent. You should know something, I whispered. His fingers paused. I'd do it all again. He arched a brow. Even the betrayal? Even the marriage? That made something flicker behind his eyes, something dangerous, but not toward me, toward everything else. He sat up, pulled me into his lap, and kissed my bare shoulder. Then you're mine, he said, in truth this time. No rules? He grinned. Only one. I tilted my head. What is it? You don't run. And if I do, his grip tightened on my waist, then I'll burn the world finding you. I laughed, soft, tired, wrecked, not because it was funny, because I believed him, and because I knew if it came to that, I wouldn't run far. He was the king who never gave up the war, and I was the queen who chose him anyway, not for peace, but for everything after. Most people think survival ends when the war is over, that once the shooting stops and the blood is cleaned off the floor, life just resumes. But they've never lived in this world. They don't know what it means to wake up next to a man who once vowed never to love, and now worships you like it's the only vow he never broke. They don't know what it means to belong to power, to be kept but never caged, to be the weakness he never wanted, and the weapon he'll now use to destroy anyone who forgets whose wife I am. They don't know what we became. Because the real war wasn't between our families, it was between our rules. His kingdom, my silence, his obsession, my lies, and somehow we both won. The first time he brought me to New York, I felt like I was walking into a story I wasn't supposed to read. Skyscrapers, men in black, cars I'd never seen in daylight. Deals whispered over vintage scotch and threats tucked into smiles. But I didn't flinch, because I knew now I was never meant to be the outsider. I was meant to be the echo, the hush that falls when the queen enters the room and every man remembers she chose the devil, and she's smiling anyway. They call me Lady Blackwood now, but behind my back, they still call me the Ice Queen, the woman who made the American king kneel. They're wrong, of course. He never kneeled. He just lowered his guard long enough to let me inside, and once I was in, I never left. He touches me more now. Not constantly, not carelessly, but with purpose. A hand on my lower back when we walk through dangerous rooms. Fingers at the nape of my neck when I'm too quiet too long. A kiss to my shoulder when I leave him in the middle of a strategy meeting just to prove I can. He lets me leave, but he always pulls me back, and I always go. Because I don't run anymore. Not from him, not from this life, and not from the girl I used to be. She's still in there. The girl who lied and survived and froze her heart in a palace of duty. But now she wears diamonds on her neck and blood on her heels. And she still knows how to smile without showing her teeth. She just doesn't have to anymore. We sleep in the same bed now. It's unspoken. There's no rule for it. Just a silent agreement between two people who once made vows for war and woke up choosing something softer. Not easy. Never easy. But real. He doesn't say he loves me. I never ask. Because love isn't the currency here. Obsession is. And Hunter Blackwood is very rich. Sometimes in the middle of the night, I'll wake to find him watching me. He won't touch me. Won't speak. Just stare. Like he still can't believe I'm real. Or that I stayed. Or maybe because he knows, if I ever do run again, he won't chase. He'll burn the world first. And I love that. I love him. God help me, I love the monster I married, not because he changed, but because he didn't. He never surrendered his crown. He never stepped off his throne. He never knelt to peace or mercy or anything that wasn't me. And I never replaced him. I never ruled, but I stood at his side, and together we bent the world until it bowed. So no, this isn't a love story. It's a surrender, a lie, a truth, a war. And I wouldn't change a single scar because I was the price of peace. But now, I'm the queen of his kingdom, the ruin he'd kill for, the fire he'd start all over again. And every time he calls me Sposa mia now, I don't freeze, I melt. Because I may be the Ice Queen. But he was always the fire. And in the end, we didn't just survive the war, we rewrote it. Together. Forever.